Mitch Landrieu is the former mayor of New Orleans and likely 2020 Democratic presidential contender who absolutely nobody in this country is excited about, and he recently gave his thoughts to Jake Tapper on CNN about what the Democratic Party can do to be successful going forward. And as you'll see here, his thoughts are completely idiotic.
Are you concerned at all about your party, as critics say, lurching to the left?
Well, first of all, I don't speak for the National Democratic Party. As you know, I was the mayor of the city of New Orleans. So having said that, I have always talked about governing from the middle. I'm what they call a radical centrist. There are not many of us left anymore. And yeah, it is really important for us to make sure that if we are given the responsibility to govern, that we govern in a pragmatic way, in a big tent way that makes sense. I don't think abolishing ICE is a good idea, primarily because when police departments get out of the way, do the wrong thing, or governed in the wrong way, you don't say get rid of the police department, you reform the police department. We are, in fact, a nation of immigrants. We know that. We're also a nation of laws. And I do think that Congress has been remiss in not passing comprehensive immigration reform. But it does have to be common sense. It has to be thoughtful. It has to protect the border while at the same time making sure that everybody is dealt with in a constitutional way. I do believe very clearly that separating families from children was not a smart thing. It was a cruel thing. That really is not who we are, and there's a much better way to do that.
As a centrist, as somebody who believes in governing from the center, are you concerned to see the Democratic Party, which you and your family have been proud members of for generations, going to the left on a lot of these issues?
Well, I think that what you'll see this with the Republicans and the Democrats. It happens every election cycle. The party themselves will get tested from the left, the middle, and the right. Both parties are going to do that. And of course, that's going to happen to the Democratic Party, too. It's clear that President Trump is going to be the nominee of the Republican Party, and you will see a family fight on the Democratic side. And you see the party getting pulled to the left. You'll have people from the middle. You have people to the right of the party, and that's the way it's always going to be. If the Democrats want to win, they're going to have to govern responsibly. They're going to have to govern with common sense. They're going to have to think about what people in America want, which is essentially to have a great opportunity and great responsibility and a better chance for themselves and for their kids.
So I think that there were probably like 4 or 5 times when I facepalmed during that interview because it was just, I mean, I don't even know where to start. So first of all, I'll just say that radical centrism is not a thing. That term is an oxymoron. Not a thing. You can't be a radical centrist because by definition, if you're a centrist, you're in the middle of the opposing extremes. But in actuality, he's not a centrist. He is center-right. Because at a time when the Overton window in America has shifted so far to the right, you're not governing from the center if you think you're in the center. You're actually governing from the right. Now, also, there's this underlying implication in what he said about how basically centrists such as himself are being marginalized. Because, you know, I'm a radical centrist and there's just not much of us left. But as you can see from this thumbnail here, this is a photo of him attending the Third Way Democrat conference called Opportunity 2020, where a bunch of Democratic Party elites and fundraisers and donors all got together for one giant circle jerk to talk about how they can defeat progressivism and more specifically Bernie Sanders in 2020. So the mere fact that there's enough of you for this type of convention proves you wrong, but also look at the Democratic Party. They're a center-right, if not conservative party. You have individuals like Joe Manchin who basically side with Republicans more so than Democrats. You have individuals who are in control in party leadership, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, who are the definition of center-right politicians. Chuck Schumer even opposed President Obama's Iran deal. Nancy Pelosi won't support Medicare for all, and she calls herself a progressive. So to claim that these centrist voices are becoming more and more marginalized, that's just fundamentally untrue. Now, I do want to give you some additional context because he was talking about ICE. He made the reference to ICE, and this was because when Jake Tapper was framing the question, he was going to ask him about the Democratic Party moving to the left, seemingly moving to the left according to Jake Tapper, which is not true, but he was basically bringing up how individuals were getting more vocal about wanting to abolish ICE. And that led Mitch Landrieu to talk about ICE, and he said this: I don't think abolishing ICE is a good idea, primarily because when police departments get out of the way, do the wrong thing, or govern in the wrong way, you don't say get rid of the police department, you reform the police department. But that's actually a false equivalence, because ICE isn't like police departments. It is an additional agency that's on top of the agencies that already exist that tackle immigration. ICE is more like if a police agency was created specifically to tackle prostitution, just for argument's sake, and that agency ended up doing tons of abuses. Instead of cracking down on prostitution, really there's rampant abuse, where individuals in the agency are abusing sex workers, and they're not actually doing anything meaningful that curtails prostitution.
Take them all to the station for oral and anal sex with a prostitute. Half of them didn't even use a condom. Don't you stupid kids know the diseases you can catch? Hand me that evidence bag.
So you don't need ICE when we already have government agencies that tackles the issue of immigration, just like you wouldn't need an additional government agency with regard to the police department to tackle prostitution, because there's already a wing of state and local governments that tackles prostitution. So you don't need another agency in there making matters worse. Now, one thing that he said that I think he wanted praise for was he said, I do believe very clearly that separating families from children was not a smart thing. It was a cruel thing. Can we get a slow clap for Mitch Landrieu there? He actually finally took an unequivocal stance against one right-wing policy. How brave of you. I mean, for him to come out against a policy that is borderline fascist with regard to immigration. I mean, it just shows that you're a coward. If that's the only thing that you're willing to call out Donald Trump for, then you're not a centrist. You are just a right-wing enabler, Mitch. Now, Jake Tapper asked him if he's concerned the Democratic Party is moving too far to the left, and this was Mitch's response. If the Democrats want to win, they're going to have to govern responsibly. They're going to have to govern with common sense. They're going to have to think about what people in America want, which is essentially to have a great opportunity, great responsibility, and have a better chance for themselves and for their kids. Now, if you remove those words from the context of him discussing centrism, these are platitudes that are so meaningless they could still be applied to progressivism or conservatism and kind of fit. But the overall point that he was trying to make is that, look, if Democrats want to be successful, here's what they've got to do. They've got to actually be willing to work with Republicans. They've got to govern from the middle. They've got to run candidates who aren't these firebrand progressives, but candidates who are more conservative, maybe, who are willing to reach across the aisle and recruit Republicans even if they want to be electorally successful. Oh wait, we actually just tried that in 2016, and guess what happened? Democrats fell flat on their fucking faces, Mitch. So I mean, it's like they don't grasp that we just ran a centrist. We just had a centrist in the White House for 2 terms, and guess what happened? The party has been decimated, but they still don't get it. They still don't get it. And it's mind-boggling to me. These are people who want to run for president, and they know nothing about politics. They're so detached from the struggle of working-class Americans that they actually think that we want more centrism. No, we don't want centrism, because if you're in the center of a political system with an Overton window shifted far to the right, then you're just conceding to Republicans. And furthermore, even if the goal was centrist policies, you don't start negotiation by already conceding. You start from the left, so you end up in the center. But they don't get it. Basic concepts with regard to governing go straight over their heads. So, I mean, I can't wait to see Mitch Landrieu run, because if he honestly thinks he's going to excite anyone with this milquetoast brand of neoliberalism that might even be more milquetoast than what we've seen previously from Democrats, he's in for a rude awakening.
Support this podcast by becoming a patron at patreon.com/Humanist Report.